On the broadcast tonight, the latest on the post-Sewol-ho ferry disaster. The weather is hampering the search for more than 30 people who still remain missing, and the head of the ferry operator has been arrested. South Korea's defense ministry confirms that all 3 drones found near the inter-Korean border earlier this year were programmed to fly from North Korea and back. Meanwhile, Seoul's top diplomat has a serious warning for Pyongyang's nuclear test. And following one of the nation's worst ferry accidents and ahead of local elections next month, Korea's political parties elect new floor leaders. Early edition begins now. It is 5 a.m. in New York, 4 p.m. in Bangkok, and 6 on a Thursday evening here in Seoul. This is Early Edition at 6, live from Seoul. I'm Moon Gon-young.
And I'm Daniel Chen. Thank you for joining us.
Now, more than 3 weeks have passed since a Sewol-ho ferry capsized off the southwestern coast of Korea, and over 30 passengers still remain missing.
And as search operations continue for those missing, investigations to find out who is responsible for what is also in high gear.
Let's bring you up to speed on that. We go live to our Kim Ji-yeon at the news center. Ji-yeon, the ferry operator of the sunken vessel will no longer be allowed to do business.
That's right, Kon-young. The Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries says it will revoke the business license of the Cheongjin Marine Company today. And the ministry did say earlier that it would start the process after formal investigations proceeded against the ferry operator. But in light of recent developments that demonstrate negligence on the part of the captain and crew members, it's clear the ministry is not going to wait any longer.
Speaking of investigations and paying the price, the representative of the ferry operator, Kim Han-sik, was arrested earlier this Thursday on multiple charges that include negligent homicide.
That's right, Daniel. The prosecutors are trying to prove that the ferry operator had knowledge of the vessel's problems but continued to transport passengers and cargo for the sake of profits. The investigative team argues that the overloading of cargo on the Sewol-ho ferry would not have been possible without the approval of the ferry operator's CEO.
And by launching a probe into Kim, the prosecution is trying to zoom in on who is believed to be the de facto owner of this marine company for business irregularities, correct?
That's absolutely right. The name is Yoo Byung-won, and arrest warrants were issued to key figures in connection to Yoo, including his second son, who has permanent residency in the United States. The prosecutors are seeking to force Yoo's son into the country with the help of the FBI after he failed to appear for questioning a 3rd time today.
Now let's shift our focus to the rescue efforts there. There have been no additional bodies recovered for the past 24 hours. Difficult weather conditions, of course, hampered it. Any developments in the search operation so far, Jian?
Well, guys, the operations were temporarily suspended due to strong currents, and it's getting dangerous for all of those involved in the search operations that are continuing around the clock. And there are a rising number of injuries among volunteers and officers participating. More than 20 divers have been taken to a nearby hospital after showing symptoms of decompression sickness, a diver's disease that includes acute pain. The Coast Guard official that was found unconscious yesterday is fortunately doing better today after undergoing surgery. More medical staff have been deployed since a civilian diver died earlier this week, but there's a call for more measures to ensure the safety of civilian search divers. I'll bring more updates later today.
All right, that was our Kim Ji-yeon with the latest on the search operations and the ongoing investigation with regards to what's turning out to be the nation's worst maritime disaster. Now, in the wake of the Sewol-ho ferry incident, the government has stepped up efforts to uphold stricter regulations to ensure the safety of passenger ferries operating right here in Korea.
The Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries says it plans to expand an ordinance that was limited to only cargo vessels and foreign ships to include passenger ferries that have routes in Korea within the next 6 months. The measure was passed at the National Assembly late last month.
Now, the entire nation remains in a state of shock and grief over the Sewol-ho sinking more than 3 weeks after the ferry capsized.
But the place hit the hardest by the tragedy is Ansan, of course. It is a city that most of the victims called home. Our Shin Se-min reports on how the city is coming to terms with their grief.
A final trip around the school they once attended. For the 11th grade students of Tanwon High School who died in the Sewol-ho ferry tragedy, this drive-through campus in a slow-moving hearse signifies their last visit. It's also meant to bring some sense of closure to the living who are grieving over the loss of so many young lives. Ribbons and countless notes adorn the fence outside the high school, letters and messages that read, "I'm sorry, please come home safely." It's hard to find anyone in the city of Ansan who doesn't know someone directly affected by the disaster.
I came here to see those kids enter school in funeral hearses. I have a grandson who is a senior and attends the school. It breaks my heart to think of the suffering the teens and their families are going through.
Gojandong is among the hardest hit neighborhoods in the city. The working class area, composed of simple brick apartment buildings, was home to 109 students that were on the ferry.
What used to be a bustling school zone filled with groups of teenagers has changed. Residents describe a stillness now brought on by the loss of a high school and loss of the city.
Grief has shrouded the city of Ansan, which has a population of 710,000 people. It permeates every corner of the community and has taken a toll on local business. Shop owners say they've seen a considerable drop in their number of customers.
The area is grieving over the students who have died, such young students. It's completely understandable that sales have dropped.
The tragedy has brought this community together. The city's residents seek out comfort at a mass memorial hall in Hwarang Park, where they come to console one another. A sign that the tight community stands together in this most difficult time. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now, in domestic politics, following one of the nation's worst ferry accidents in history and ahead of local elections early next month, the ruling and opposition parties elected new floor leaders on this Thursday. The ruling Saenuri Party named its single candidate Lee Wan-gu their new floor leader without a vote. His running mate Chu Ho-young was chosen as the head of the party's policy committee. Now, Lee is a member of the faction closest to President Park. The main opposition bloc, a New Politics Alliance for Democracy, elected Park Young-sun as its new floor leader following a runoff. Park, who garnered support from the current leadership and junior lawmakers in the party, is the first woman to hold such a post in Korea's constitutional history. The two floor leaders now face the task of negotiating ways to probe the Sewol-ho ferry accident and the government's response, as well as coming up with measures to prevent such disasters in the future. Now, the final verdict is in. The 3 unmanned aerial vehicles recently found on South Korean soil did in fact come from North Korea. Seoul's defense ministry released the findings from its over a month-long probe. Our national defense correspondent Kim Hyun-bin has the details.
A joint South Korea-U.S. investigative team looking into the 3 unmanned aerial vehicles that were discovered in South Korea over a 2-week period starting in late March has stated definitely that they were sent from the north. The team's report says the drones were headed back when they crashed after running out of fuel. The GPS coordinates of the UAV show that they flew over key military facilities and took dozens of pictures, a clear violation of Korea's Armistice Agreement and the Non-Aggression Pact, which forbids the North and South from infiltrating each other's airspace. South Korea's defense ministry called it a clear military provocation, and they plan to submit the results of their findings to the United Nations. North Korea has hundreds of unmanned aerial vehicles in its possession, and dozens of others are believed to have flown over the south before returning safely to the north. When modified, experts say these surveillance-purpose drones could hold up to 10 kilograms of explosives. It's raised concerns about possible attacks, and the South Korean military admits a gap in its security. While it says it's well equipped to deal with enemy jet incursions and attack UAVs, they have a much harder time detecting these smaller drones. Seoul says it plans to purchase low-altitude radar and other military gadgetry to prevent further infiltrations. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, speculation continues to swirl that North Korea is gearing up to make good on its threat and conduct a fourth and a new form of nuclear test. South Korea is taking the threat very seriously, but it also has a warning of its own. Any nuclear test will be met with severe consequences. Here's our Song Ji-sun with this report.
If Pyongyang pushes ahead with a fourth nuclear test and defies the international community, it can expect swift and strong punishment. This was the gist of the South Korean foreign minister's warning to North Korea when he said the regime would pay the heaviest price in new sanctions. Chairing a meeting at the UN Security Council on Wednesday, Yoon Byung-se said a test would have a huge impact on the strategic landscape in Northeast Asia and would pose a serious challenge to Beijing as well.
We must clearly warn North Korea that if it challenges the international community with another nuclear test, it will be met with the most serious consequences.
At the same time, Yoon stressed Seoul wants to build a peaceful and new Korean peninsula through President Park Geun-hye's reunification drive. But Pyongyang continues to verbally attack President Park's initiatives. The North Korean daily Rodong Sinmun said Thursday that Park's ambition is only stirring the potential for war. It also says South Korean government was fooling the nation with a diabolical idea. Meanwhile, the U.S. confirmed Wednesday that Secretary of State John Kerry met with Wang Jia-rui, China's international director of the Communist Party. Wang, considered a key messenger between China's Communist Party and North Korea's Workers' Party, is believed to have discussed a possible resumption of the six-party talks on North Korea's denuclearization. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life, talking with you on air and online, connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best with Moon Gon-young and Daniel Che on Early Edition at 6.
The Korean won continues to stay strong against the US dollar, and that's raising concerns among local exporters who stand to lose price competitiveness overseas. But as our Hwang Jae reports, it's the small and mid-sized enterprises that should be most concerned.
The Korean won continues to hover around its highest level in nearly 6 years, currently trading at the 1,020 level against the US dollar. Last month, the local currency strengthened more than 3% against the greenback, the biggest appreciation among the world's 40 major currencies. While experts predict the Korean won to remain strong for the time being, with the nation's current account balance remaining in the black for a prolonged period of time, they believe that the impact on local exporters will be limited.
I don't think it'll have that big an impact, but I do want to remind people that, well, during normal times, Korean won was always around $1,000 won per dollar. Right. Just before the Asian financial crisis, it was in the high 900s, and right before the global financial crisis, it was around 1,000. Mm-hmm. So it may be that the period we had for the last 4 years was sort of the abnormal period, and we were just getting back to normality.
Experts say what's really worrying are the small and medium-sized companies that are not fully prepared for the changes in exchange rates.
Well, the government, for the small and medium-sized companies, they instituted things like exchange rate insurance. Now, two problems. One is that it's not as widely known as it should be among small and medium-sized enterprises, so they don't take advantage of it. And then the second problem is the amount that they set aside for it may not be enough to cover a lot of the SMEs. So that program and other programs designed to hedge against exchange rate changes should be made larger, and it should be advertised more.
With concerns lingering that the economic growth could be hurt by slowing private consumption due to the Sewol-ho ferry disaster, coupled with the strong local currency, the government has announced it will hold an emergency meeting led by President Park Geun-hye on Friday. Hwang Jae, Arirang News.
Samsung SDS announced plans to go public. The IT solution affiliate to Samsung Group, Korea's largest conglomerate, says it will expand its business overseas to pioneer in communication and healthcare services, on track to be quick listed as one of the nation's top 20 firms. Our Connie Kim reports.
Samsung SDS, the IT solutions affiliate of Korea's largest conglomerate, Samsung Group, has announced plans to go public this year, expanding business to overseas markets. The company explained Wednesday that conglomerates are limited from participating in the public market, preventing growth. The CEO of Samsung SDS said it'll make a new leap forward to secure new growth technology and pioneer in communication and healthcare services in markets abroad. IPO lead managers will be selected this month, along with a decision on the size of the share offering. Industry insiders say the company's announcement will speed up work to succeed the group to the children of Samsung's chairman, Lee Gun-hee. Samsung Electronics currently holds the largest share of more than 22% of Samsung SDS. Lee Jae-yong, the first son of Lee Gun-hee, holds over 11% of the company's shares, while daughters Lee Bu-jin and Lee Seo-yeon both have over 3% of the company's total shares. Currently traded at around $144 per share in the over-the-counter market, it is estimated that after the public listing, the company will be valued at around $10.8 billion. This exceeds the value of LG Electronics at $10.7 billion, currently ranked 18th in the nation. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Following 3 days of deliberations, the second major patent trial between Apple and Samsung Electronics has finally reached a verdict.
An 8-member jury in San Jose, California handed back a mixed verdict in the Apple versus Samsung patent infringement case, determining that both companies were guilty in some aspects but not guilty in others.
Right, but industry watchers say this time the great patent war had the look and feel of a Samsung win with a big assist from Google. Let's take a closer look. For that, Dr. Moon Song-chun joins us live in the studio. He is a professor at the Graduate School of Management at the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. Professor Moon, thank you for joining us.
Hello, both of you.
Now, first of all, let's talk about the patent trial lawsuit this time around. Of course, some say although Samsung was fined about $119.6 million, 2 years ago, Apple was awarded nearly $1 billion in round one of this legal slugfest. So although Samsung has been ordered to pay a fine, many say this could be viewed as a Samsung win. Why is that so?
This is a very long and tedious battle between Samsung and Apple for the past 3 years. And for the past 3 years, Samsung seemed to be a loser, and Apple seemed to be a clear winner. But the result of round two has shown that the Apple also infringed Samsung in terms of mobile telecommunication patent. So Samsung has been removed, the image of copycat, image of single copycat. So Samsung is very happy, and the amount of money that Samsung needs to pay is not, important to Samsung. So Samsung is very pleased with the result, and we interpret that way.
Okay, but every victory here does not mean a permanent one in this ongoing war between Apple and Samsung. For Friday's verdict, what does it mean for Samsung, the world's largest smartphone maker? What did it gain and what did it lose at the same time?
As you know, the Samsung has nothing to lose in this battle, because Samsung is fighting against Apple on behalf of Google. The Samsung is one of the leader in Google, regime, and the Apple is trying to show their leadership in the area of software, because the patent, the Apple is strong, and the patent, the Apple raises questions in the area of software, and on the other hand, the patent that the Samsung is strong and the the question raised by Samsung is in the area of mobile communication. So they actually work in different areas. Samsung is for mobile communication, Apple is for software. But the battle turns out to be the Apple versus Google in terms of software. So I think the jury in this San Jose court begin to realize that this is a domestic fight rather than international fight. So they tend to mitigate, they make the degree less for the payment that the Samsung needs to pay for Apple. So it is a really big, reduction. It is 1/20th amount,
Right, of what
the result of round one
of 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I suppose Samsung has its legal delegation to thank for that, for making such a great case against Apple. Now, industry watchers, however, say that an appeals galore is what we can expect in the weeks and months and years to come, and that Apple will continue to fight Samsung with one patent case after another. What is Apple's primary reason for doing that?
The Apple is the frontier industry company that creates smartphone. Apple has a strong desire to stay at the top of the smartphone industry, and that's why the Apple is continuing this kind of battle. But I think for the past 3 years, Apple has long prepared to take Google as a challenger. This is a time that the software is very important in the area of IT, and we begin to realize that the software is the main big thing in the area of IT, because what the Apple and Google will fight is the software. That's not mobile communication. That's not user interface. It is the real core of the software, which is operating system. So the Android and Apple iOS will fight, in the future, I think.
It's funny how the first company that came up with the first smartphone, IBM, is nowhere near this ballet arena today. Well,
Yeah.
Dr. Moon, thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to turning to you for more on the ongoing battle between Apple and Samsung next time and more.
Thanks, Andy.
Korea's foreign currency reserves rose to an all-time high last month. The Bank of Korea said Thursday that the nation was holding $355.8 billion of foreign currency as of the end of April, up $1.5 billion from the previous month. Now, it represents the 10th straight month of increase. The central bank attributes the trend to a strong euro and a rise in investment profits. Korea had the 7th largest foreign reserves in the world. As of the end of March, China leads the pack, followed by Japan and Switzerland.
Online shopping is about to get even more easy here in Korea. Starting at the end of this month, financial authorities will scrap the current system that requires consumers to use electronic banking certificates when making purchases of over 300,000 won or $290 from online shopping malls. The system as it stands now makes it difficult for foreigners living in the country and people overseas to shop on Korean sites. The measure is part of the government's deregulation drive, which attempts to cut out the red tape that hampers business activities.
Now, down in Jindo, the long search for those missing in waters off Korea's southwestern coast continues.
Today, the conditions were quite harsh, hindering search efforts there. Let's get the latest on the weather with our Michelle. Michelle?
Well, today was definitely not the best weather for the rescuers. However, things are looking better as winds and waves have calmed. Now, tomorrow we can expect clear skies and lower tides, which should give the divers an easier time with the search. Now, Now for the rest of the nation, although it was chilly throughout the day, we can expect warmer temperatures tomorrow through Saturday. However, temperatures will dip once again with the rain that's in the store on Sunday. Now, the daytime highs are expected to rise tomorrow up to 26 degrees for some regions, but keep in mind that there will be about 10-degree difference of the temperature gaps between the mornings and evenings. Now going over to our temperature readings, Seoul tops out at 10 before reaching up to 25 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Daegu and Busan will peak up to 26 and 22 degrees. Now moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops out at 22, Dokdo and Malkumgang both tops out at 16. Well, that's all I have at this moment. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you guys.
Thank you for that, Michelle. And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thank you for watching. This is Parents' Day here in Korea. For parents around the world, thank you. Good luck. This has been Daniel Che.
And I'm Moon Gan-young. To those of you in other parts of the world, have a great start of your day, and we hope to see you right back here same time tomorrow. Bye-bye.